Is your business protected against the threat of malicious litigation and frivolous lawsuits? Are you sinking company profits into marketing campaigns that do nothing to contribute to the growth of your business? Bottled Business Sense provides practical business perspectives that uniquely emphasize both legal and media marketing strategies to protect and ensure the longevity of your business. Now, whether you're trying to provide a startup business with some level of stability or an established business with foolproof asset and estate protection, or simply attempting to get a better return for your business marketing dollars, Bill Bernard and Rick Moscoso will expose potential pitfalls to ensure the security and growth of your business, free from unwanted expense and the threat of litigation. You'll learn how to implement marketing and protection tools equal to those used by today's most successful corporations. Let's join Bill and Rick for today's Bottled Business Sense show.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday morning here at 10 a.m. for another episode of the Bottled Business Sense show. I'm Rick Moscoso, one of your co-hosts, and on the other side I have my esteemed co-host, Mr. Bill Bernard. How you doing today, Bill?
Doing great, Rick, and good morning, everybody. Glad to be here with you again for another great show. We hope everybody's had a prosperous week, and they're ready for a little more information that they can jot down in their little BBS show encyclopedia, as we'd like to call it. We've got a show today, Rick. Last week we spoke about some quote-unquote popular things that get employers sued and put them on the courthouse steps. I think we would be remiss if we didn't follow that up with a show that basically provided all of our viewers and listeners with some basic things that they need to know should, in fact, they end up on the courthouse steps. Remember, despite all the information Rick and I give you in these shows, it doesn't mean that if you follow it all to a T, you still won't be sued. Why? Because, number one, there are such things as malicious lawsuits, and number two, as I say in my Bottle Business Sense newsletter, you don't have to be at fault to be sued. Anybody can take a shot at you if they want to. The question is, will they win, and will they have to pay some costs later on if they lose for filing a lawsuit that ended up either not having merit or that they lost on the merits of the lawsuit. So in any event, we think there's some basic things that you need to know. And what do we always talk about, Rick, from day one in terms of a protection standpoint? We've always talked about the fact that our business owners should do what? They should have what?
They should have an entity to protect themselves, number one. They should have legal counsel, have a good accountant, and someone that can help them with their marketing. Right?
That's right. And let's take the first point there. They should have an entity. So if you do have an entity, if you were wise enough to get the entity, that's the first step. If you're a corporation or an LLC and you are sued, remember that only a lawyer can represent an entity in court. You can't represent yourself as the president of that entity. You must retain a lawyer. Because California law prohibits anyone other than an attorney to represent a corporation or limited liability in court proceedings unless it is a small claims matter where lawyers aren't allowed anyway. I would caution everyone to make sure that their business is in good standing with the California Secretary of State in order for them to properly defend or even bring a lawsuit on behalf of the company. Usually a business entity is in good standing if it pays its taxes and files its annual statements or biannual statements, depending on the entity that you are, and making sure that you're not suspended. Because if you are, you're going to be unable to defend or prosecute any lawsuit. So make sure you check with the California Secretary of State website on any business entity that attempts to bring a lawsuit against you or that you are intending to bring a lawsuit against. You can find out if that entity is in good standing by simply punching in the name of the entity on that website. Very important stuff, Rick.
How updated is that information on that site?
It's generally updated very, very well. It'll tell you when something's been filed. Now, you may fall in the cracks where you've hired someone to file your documents. They've been sent on to the state but haven't actually been filed yet. And you know, that's why you're going to want to try to get a gauge on this and find out if these entities are will eventually have file status. But if they are filed, if you're intending to sue a company and you don't know if their entity has been filed yet, you check with the California Secretary of State website. Then, if you don't see it, you can make some further investigation a few days later or a couple of weeks later, or even check with a lawyer to see what they can find out about this company. But chances are, if you don't find them on the website, they have not been filed as a business entity, because even if a business entity has been filed, if they're suspended or dissolved, that will show up on the website.
Okay, and where is it what they would go to check for that? Check the status?
California Secretary of State. I don't know the exact URL, but all you got to do is Google California Secretary of State. It immediately pops up, and I'm sure it's some .gov URL.
Okay. All right, great.
Very easy to find, though. I go on it all the time, many times, and I still haven't memorized the URL. So I just punch in California Secretary of State, it pops up, you just click on it.
Right.
Another thing people should know is that you can find out about lawsuits that have been filed. If you have a lawsuit, you can find out on California websites about certain aspects of the lawsuit. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this. This is just an aside, but I want to give the names of various counties that you can go to find out the status of a lawsuit. Los Angeles County, Orange County, Ventura County, Riverside County, San Bernardino County, and San Diego County. You go, let's take LA for an example. You go Google Los Angeles County Superior Court, and you'll be able to choose from sites that will allow you to go and find out about your case. And that is ever expanding. Most counties now will have some availability to where you can go on and get certain forms that you need to file with the court when appropriate, and to check up on the status of a case. Some of them are starting to charge fees for some of these things, but my only point here is to advise you that county court websites are available for you to inquire and determine the status of a particular case. Back to one of the basics, Rick. You normally have 30 days to respond to a complaint. So if you are served with a complaint, you have 30 days to respond unless you call the other side and negotiate a longer time. Okay? Many people falsely believe, unfortunately, many business owners falsely believe, if the process server attempts to give them the summons and the complaint, the process server does not have to hand the process server does not have to hand them the papers directly. That's not the case. If you're served with a lawsuit and those papers, that person knows you're there, and those papers are placed at a point where you have access to them, you always want to call a lawyer to make sure you understand and confirm whether or not you've been served. And that goes into a little bit more procedural detail that I don't want to really get into too much on this show. Essentially, what I want to say is, if you are served, or if you believe you potentially have been served, check with a lawyer, confirm the status of service, and then you have 30 days to respond to any outstanding complaint, unless you can negotiate a longer time to file with the other side. Oftentimes, two lawyers will give professional courtesies and say, "Hey, I just got this complaint from my client. They only got about another 20 days left. Can you give me an extension of 2 weeks, or can you give me another 30 days to respond?" And the side who filed the complaint can, in fact, do that. So that's something that I think our owners should be aware of. And that's important, Rick, because if you don't respond to a complaint, or you don't ask for an extension of time, the other side can file a default judgment against you by seeking a default judgment pursuant to Code of Civil Procedure in California, Section 585. You have an allotted time to respond, or you negotiate a longer time. Whatever that time is, if you fail to do so, you could have a default filed against you, and that could be bad news.
Okay, so I have two simple questions here, just to clarify.
We'll see how simple they are.
Yeah. So when you say default judgment, what exactly does that mean? And when the clock starts ticking on your 30 days, is that 30 calendar days or is that 30 business days? Clarify that for our listeners.
Yeah, it's 30 days. There's no such thing as 30 business days. It's 30 days. That's the easy part. And then the next part, a default judgment. A default judgment means that you have defaulted, that you haven't responded or answered a document that was filed in court that now makes you a defendant in a lawsuit. The plaintiff, the person bringing the lawsuit, has filed a lawsuit against you. You are the defendant. You have failed to respond. Now the other side can come in and say, well, they failed to respond. They didn't ask for an extension. We're going to take a default judgment. The court looks at the default, signs it, and now you have a judgment against you that you must pay in conjunction with whatever the other party was claiming in the complaint that they filed against you. You can go into court and seek relief from a default judgment, depending upon the circumstances, excusable neglect, or some sort of negligence. You can basically say, hey, here's the reason why I didn't respond to the complaint. I'd like another shot. Sometimes the courts, depending upon good cause shown, will allow the default to be overturned. But otherwise, why risk that? Make sure it's calendared. Make sure you have your lawyer on board. Make sure you know when the time is to respond or when any negotiated extension of time exists upon or in which you have to respond.
Yeah, right. Well, that makes total sense. If you're a business owner and you get served with something like this, then absolutely, first thing you do is call somebody that's representing you, like Bill or your own attorney, to make sure you comply with these time schedules, right?
That's right, Rick. And you know, another important point is what if you were sued? And let's say it was somebody that you knew and you were doing business with this person on a regular or semi-regular basis, and you were sued and you got a process server served you with a complaint. What would be the first thing you would do when you got that complaint?
Well, I want to know where it was coming from first. What's the basis of the lawsuit?
Once you determine that, once you read it, what would you do then?
Well, I'd contact somebody like you to represent me, right?
Okay, good answer. Good answer. I'll tell you what some people do. They try to get on the phone with the other side to discuss the case. If you know, and you'll know when you're served with the complaint, because on the top of the complaint will have the individual who's suing you and the lawyer, if any, that's representing that person. If you know that a lawyer is in place for the other side, and he or she is being represented by a lawyer, you cannot speak directly to that party. And that goes very, very more particularly for other lawyers. For example, let's say you called me, Rick, and you retained me to defend your lawsuit. I cannot call Joe Blow, who's suing you, because he's represented by a lawyer. I have to communicate strictly and only with his lawyer. So oftentimes people make the mistake of wanting to communicate directly. Hey, let's resolve this. Well, if neither party is represented by a lawyer, certainly that's possible. But if you know somebody's represented by a lawyer, especially another attorney, that attorney cannot contact the other side and say, hey, let's discuss this. And just ignore the fact that that person has legal representation. Can't do that.
I mean, what situation, though, if you really had some legal claim against somebody, would they even think about pursuing this on their own?
Well, oftentimes people will think, oh, I know this guy, I can resolve this by talking to him, we can talk it out. this was a misunderstanding, or hey, I want to settle this right away before I get too involved in this case, and there's a lot of legal fees. There could be a number of circumstances where somebody, wants to pick up the phone, and there could be another circumstance too, Rick, that we haven't discussed, and that is you could have a guy who wants to pick up the phone just to yell and scream at the person, or you could have an attorney representing the person being sued, the defendant, who decides for whatever unethical and unprofessional reason, I'm going to call and bully this other guy and put him in his place, even though I know he's represented by a counsel. So there's a number of different reasons why this could occur. The safest bet is to make sure, if you know the other side's represented, communicate through counsel.
What consequence could somebody encounter if they didn't contact the other side through legal counsel?
Well, if the other side makes the court aware of it and brings some sort of a motion, they can get a protective order, so you cannot communicate directly with the plaintiff, and that may involve the award of fees against you for having to bring the protective order. Okay. Whatever it costs to make that motion would be charged to you. Yeah. And if it gets even worse and you continue to do that, well, then the penalties become more severe. You could be in contempt of court for violation of a prior court order and end up going to jail if this becomes such an exaggerated situation that you decide, I'm going to do what I want, when I want, I don't care what the court says. Before we go further, we ought to take a quick break. I know you may have another couple questions pending, Rick, and we'll get to those, but we are going to talk about one of our new sponsors, and that would be High Road Data, or High Road Data, as it's sometimes called, and that's owned and operated by Mr. Ken Ruben, R-U-B-I-N, and Ken is a great IT guy here in the Orange County area, excuse me, who can take care of all of your IT needs. This guy is so good that many times he can just get on a Skype, or not even a Skype, a phone call. You tell him what the problem is, he then taps into your computer, bang, you're done, you're good, you move forward. Your day is not ruined because some little guy laughing in your screen is giving you a terrible virus, and now you can't function on your computer any longer. Ken has been in business for many, many years. I know him personally. I've had him take care of issues for me. Fantastic, not only knowledgeable, but just tremendous integrity. I would seriously consider Ken Ruben for any of your IT needs. And where can we get a hold of Ken, Rick?
Yeah, you can get a hold of Ken at 949-939-8270, or his email is ken@highroaddata.com, website highroaddata.com. That's Ken Ruben.
Okay, good. Contact Ken, and you'll be good to go for any IT problems you have. Getting back to the show now, I kind of want to get into a few issues, Rick, that sometimes sometimes people remember, sometimes they don't. Another issue you should do, or you should make sure is on your list if you are sued, is to make sure you contact your insurance carrier. I can give you many examples of this. If it's a general liability carrier and somebody is hurting your place of business, you want to put them on notice. You can, let's take the typical example. If you're in an auto accident, you'd want to contact an insurance company immediately, right? Because the insurance company is going to hire an attorney on your behalf to represent you if you were injured in an auto accident and you're covered. So same thing in your business. You want to put your carrier on notice. We had a prior show that dealt with this, Rick, about making sure you not only have entity protection, but that you have the proper insurance in place, the insurance to protect your business assets, the entity to protect your personal assets. So if you have insurance, you need to put your carrier on notice. Don't forget about that. Make that a priority.
Yeah, that's right. That's good advice.
Really, really important. Also, begin collecting all documents related to the lawsuit immediately. The first thing I tell, Rick, my clients, if they're sued, one of the very first things I tell them is make out a timeline. I want you to make out a timeline for me. I want you to do it in your own words. I want you to put dates and relevant events on there, and then next to each relevant event that you put down, which again includes the date or the approximate date, you list what I'm going to eventually refer to as exhibits as the lawsuit proceeds. I want you to reference them as documents. So document number 1, the contract that was signed between me and Joe Blow on June 1st, 2014. You put that on the timeline. You put the name of that document, and now you may want to jot down what was discussed in that document as it pertains to a particular issue that's the subject of the lawsuit. Then you move on down the timeline, what happened next. What you're doing is you're providing your lawyer a timeline of events that's going to be critical in determining the various defenses you're going to assert in your lawsuit, while at the same time you're collecting documents that are pertinent to the documentary evidence that you're going to use or at the very least examine as you plan a defense for your client. Just an absolute critical thing that you have to do.
Yeah, and that's why, and yet that's a great point, and that's why I know time and time again when we've talked about employee issues, things like that, it's so important to have a drop file, as you call it.
Right.
Any action or any discussion or just documentation of the conversation that you have with an employee.
That's right. And this could involve, Rick, things beyond that. What we're talking about today, we're talking about lawsuits from creditors, suppliers, clients, because you got the employees over here, if you have employees, but then over here you have the creditors, right? Mm-hmm. The clients, everybody, excuse me, the suppliers who provide you with your goods if you have products that you're selling, all of those can sue you as well. So you want to have little files on them. Of course, you're going to have files on all these people anyway, right? Not files pertaining directly to a lawsuit, but files concerning purchase orders or contracts that you've signed with them. So why not have in that file as well on each of these companies or businesses events that document what you discussed, if a particular problem arose, who you spoke to on the phone on a particular date, you jot it down, you put it in the file. This is all critical business thinking. This is what I like to refer to as preventative business medicine, Rick. You go to a physician and you get examined, right, to make sure you're healthy. You get a physical every year, or you go and get a test done if you believe something is wrong, or maybe you've had a prior problem in the past and you just want to make sure everything is still okay, so you go get a test even though you're not having any symptoms. Well, you make sure you run your business like a health clinic. You make sure you run your business like a person who's not having any particular health problems, but who wants to prevent any future health problems.
Yeah.
And that's why a lawsuit can be stressful. That's one of the final points I wanted to make today, Rick. A lawsuit can be stressful if you don't do these things, if you're not aware of these things. Because now you're throwing up your arms and you're saying, my God, what do I do next? If you don't have these preventative measures in place, then it's going to be a very stressful situation. If you have these preventative measures in place, if you're aware of the things you need to know if you are sued, you're going to be a lot less stressed. And I'm not saying a lawsuit, isn't stressful to some extent, but you can manage it if you have the right the tools in place, the right protection. Number two, the knowledge of what you need to do if you are sued. And number three, critically, an attorney on board who can help you. These are things that, you would think are easy to come by, but many people don't do it. Look, we've discussed this before, Rick, on the show. Remember when we talked about the fact that when you are R2 Visual Studios is a media marketing wonder. I'm a law firm, okay? What do you do best and what do I do best? Well, you do you promote video marketing concepts. I practice law. Many times, businesses such as ourselves get lost in the practice and forget what, Rick? We forget that we're business owners, right?
Right.
And as business owners, we need to be aware of these things, right? And so the only way to be aware of these things is to make sure that we have the knowledge that we need to practice our preventative medicine. And that would be listening to the show, making sure you have a lawyer, an accountant, and a marketing guy on your team. All of these things come into play to make any potential lawsuit less stressful if it should occur, and more importantly, cut down on the chances that it will occur in the first place. All of these things are urgent and necessary, whether you'd like to believe so or not, and it all is a function of carrying out your business duties in addition to the duties you have as the professional in the business that you practice.
Yeah, it sounds
real
like
important stuff.
It sounds like the whole moral to the story here is, folks, if you are a business owner, protect yourself by being prepared.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. And make sure that you have some available person that you can counsel with. One of the reasons I called my business WFB Legal Consulting Incorporated, Rick, as opposed to the law offices of Bill Bernard or attorney at law, whatever, is because I wanted to impress upon people that it is a consultation business, not only in terms of consulting with other lawyers who need some assistance, but consulting with my clients. I want to be a counselor to them. I want to be able to provide them with counsel and insights. And that means being on the team of the business owner, even when the business owner doesn't have particular legal problems. You want to call me for some quick advice? If you're my client, you can do that. You don't have to call me and say I need a contract prepared, or you don't have to call me and say I've got a problem with an employee, or you don't have to call and say, you know what, my living trust needs to be amended. Certainly you call me for those things, but you can also call me to find out about a specific issue that may be coming down the pike that you want to plan for, preventative medicine, or in our case, preventative lawyering. These are things that you provide to your clients as a counselor at law, and that's the reason, Rick, I chose to go that route and when I need my business initially.
Yeah, well, that's great. I mean, and just in the premise of this show, you've given so much great information to our listeners and viewers out there that I feel like from the other side of the desk here, I feel like you are consulting our viewers and listeners, and if I would ever need your services, then I know I'd be in good hands. I feel comfortable with you. You're, I feel like you really have the person's best interest at heart.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Rick. It means a lot to me. Thank you. Now, like any good counselor, you must add a disclaimer, right? And I want everyone out there to know that despite all of this educational stuff that we put on our show, we want you to know that it shouldn't stop you from consulting an attorney or a marketing person in your state, if you're in a different state, or contacting us or some other person in our field directly, because what we give you is general information and it may or may not be applicable to your specific factual scenario. It's impossible to predict. We try to cover generalities and say hopefully you can learn from that and make sure that you don't have any mistakes or problems coming down the pike. But if you do, don't just utilize whatever educational information you get from us, but please make sure you contact a lawyer or a marketing person, most especially a lawyer if you have a legal problem. That I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah, that's great. Well, for our listeners and viewers out there, if you do have any questions in regard to today's topic or any requests for future topics, you can always drop us a line at bottlebusinesssense@gmail.com. We're also on social media, or you can tweet in at bbsenseshow. Oh, sorry, bbsense on Twitter. If you need to carry on a discussion a little bit more specific to this topic, then Bill's open to starting a discussion with you. And what's the best way for them to get a hold of you, Bill?
949 is the area code for both numbers I'm about to give you, and the first one would be personal cell phone 413-6535. The second would be my office 698-6222. And then, of course, email would be bill@wfblegalconsulting.com. And I wanted to end the show, Rick, by telling everyone that Rick is in the process of building a new website for me. It'll have the same URL, wfblegalconsulting.com. So if you go to the old site, you'll see some transitional things occurring. Rick will soon have the new one up and running, and I think that will do two things. It'll give you a little bit more flavor of the things that I'm involved in, but it'll also give you a bird's eye view at the work that Rick does from a videography and website standpoint, and what he can do to help market your business. So please take a look at that. Probably within the next week or so, it should be up and running, and take a look at that, because I think you'll be impressed. I know I am, and if you need anything, contact Rick. And with that said, where can we get a hold of you, Rick?
Oh, sure. Rick at r2visualstudios.com. That's R with the number 2, visualstudios.com, or at 949-667-1182. Our website is r2visualstudios.com. So
wonderful
for that.
No problem. We will look forward to seeing our viewers and listeners back next week for another great show. Please feel free to contact us with any information you might want to pass our way in terms of questions or comments, feedback, or issues you might want to explore on the show. We're always open to that. We can't do what we love to do without you being there. So until next week, have a great, prosperous business week, and we'll see you back in the saddle here, same time, same place. Right, Rick?
All right. We'll see you again next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time here on the Bottle Business Sense Show. Have a great day, everybody.
Okay, take care.